The Revolution Podcast, Episode 2. Our thoughts on the pilot. Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Support for The Revolution Podcast is provided by listeners like you and our affiliation with HostGator. Not only does HostGator host over 8 million domains and provide powerful, reliable hosting, HostGator is environmentally friendly. Learn more about HostGator and their renewable energy credits by visiting goldenspiralmedia.com/HostGator today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody. I am Daryl.
And I'm Jeremy.
How you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Had a good night last night.
You know, I am so excited to be podcasting. The last podcast we did was just an introduction podcast to try to get your feet wet a little bit. It was almost 4 weeks ago. And so there's been a whole lot of anticipation about starting this podcast. We put a lot of work and thought into it and preparation. So I'm excited just to be here starting the podcast tonight.
I am as well, Daryl.
You know, it's one of those things. It's kind of like, I can't imagine what it's like for the creative team. I mean, they've put work into this thing longer than we have, right? I mean, they did all the work of the pilot, getting the pilot sold to the network. So the work that they did in preparation for this day, which their day was yesterday, is even longer than ours. So I can't imagine what it's like for them. But this is my little glimpse into their world of all the prep work, and finally the day arrives when you get to, share it with the world. So anyway, Jeremy, glad to have you along for the Revolution Podcast.
Glad to be here.
So our format for this podcast is going to be very similar, although not identical, to the other TV show podcast that we produce at Golden Spiral Media, and that is the Fringe Podcast. And let me just say, if you are not a watcher of the Fox TV show Fringe, become a watcher of the Fox TV show Fringe. If you're not a listener of the Fringe Podcast, become a listener of the Fringe Podcast, because it's a great show and it is a wonderful fandom, and I think you will enjoy every moment of it. So it starts in like 10 days, so you better get your watch on if you're not a Fringe watcher. But anyway, not too much about that or at the moment. So anyway, this format will be very similar to what we do with the Fringe Podcast, which means we're going to start out each episode with a little bit of news. All right, so we have some really great news to share about Revolution last night. The pilot, as you guys know, we're recording this. By the way, we record every episode live in front of an internet audience. We'll get to that more in a little bit. But it debuted last night, Monday, September 17th. How did it do, Jeremy?
It did very well, and it's very reassuring to see that it was actually viewed by 11.7 million people.
Million people. That's a great debut. In fact, I'll skip ahead and listen your notes a little bit, and I'll let you come back to this other part here.
Okay.
Now, The Voice, it was led into by The Voice, or The Voice preceded it, however you want to word that. And The Voice had a great number. In fact, it was up over its premiere from last week. So Revolution didn't quite hit the number that The Voice did, but according to NBC, this is the biggest broadcast TV drama premiere in 3 years on any network, and the biggest drama premiere on NBC in 5 years. So 3 years for any network, 5 years for NBC. That's a big, big deal.
It's a very big deal. Did you check out what show it may have preempted?
You mean like what the previous best was?
Right. Yeah,
let's not focus on that, because if you look at that, then it doesn't look as good, because here's the thing. It says it was the best on NBC in 5 years. Well, that last show was Bionic Woman. It didn't do so hot, long term. And then it says it's the best on any network in 3 years. Well, that was V, and V did get 2 seasons, but again, it didn't really have a lot of staying power. So we're not gonna let that bring it down. We're gonna relish in the success of last night and hope that points to a long, successful run for NBC and Revolution. So tell us about the ratings here, Jeremy. I know this probably doesn't mean you don't understand this as much because you don't go through it all the time. And honestly, I don't know that we're going to do the ratings every week, but it was the pilot, definitely worth mentioning the ratings for this pilot episode.
Yes, sir. Well, NBC last night was actually number one with adults, ranging 18 to 49 and total viewers. As we've already mentioned, The Voice had a great score, 4.6 with adults in that rating, up 10% from 4.2 last week. And the highly anticipated premiere that we have here, that we saw yesterday, had a 4.1 rating, with the 18 to 49 range, up from a 2.5 for last week's preview of the new normal in the time period, and way up from a 1.6 versus the premiere of the short-lived The Playboy Club, last season.
Yeah.
It's also up 8% from the premiere of Smash that was last February,
Right.
Which also had The Voice as a lead-in.
Yeah, so what does all that mean? It means absolutely nothing other than last night, for the first episode, it did great. It did as good as it could have hoped. And honestly, I think that's great given the context that this thing was out on Hulu and in iTunes and on NBC.com for close to 2 weeks before the premiere. So a lot of people could have said, well, I've already watched it, I don't want to tune in. And that could be the case. So we could see the number go up next week, or they could have watched it and said, it's not my thing. So the number could go down next week. So that's what I mean. It doesn't mean anything other than it did great yesterday. Each week is its own thing, and time will tell what the success of this show will be, but it's off to a good start.
Indeed.
Yeah. So let's talk about some other news items that we will typically cover here for the Revolution podcast. We're going to kind of give you a preview of some of the episodes that are coming up. We don't do any spoilers on this podcast. All we're really going to give you are dates and episode names or episode titles as they become available. So episode 2, which airs next week, September 24th, is called Chained Heart. And episode 3, which airs on October 1st, is called No Quarter. Episode 4, which airs on October the 8th, is called Lowell, Indiana. And I'm not really sure about that. And the reason is because it seems as these episode titles have come out, they've all been the name of a city, and then it has changed. For example, next week was originally called Pontiac, Illinois, and now it's changed to Chained Heart. So Lowell, Indiana could change, or it could stick. We'll find out. But that's on October the 8th. And episode 5, we don't know the title of it yet. It comes out on October 15th. But Fringe fans, this is kind of exciting. This episode 5, is going to be directed, or has been directed. They've already got it in the can, by John Cassar. And you'll remember that John Cassar directed an episode back in season 2 of Fringe, and we were honored to have him on our podcast that week. So that's cool to have him directing an episode of Revolution. Incidentally, he will also be directing an episode of Fringe this year. In fact, I think he went straight from Revolution to Fringe. I think he did episode 5 of Revolution, and I think he's doing episode 6 of Fringe. So we may have him on both podcasts. We're going to try. I mean, those things, you never know. But anyway, John Cassar was a pleasure to talk to him that day, so it'd be cool to get another one of his episodes.
I prefer to have him on this one for myself.
Of course you do. You're a little greedy that way.
I'm a little greedy.
Yeah. Got to watch out for Jeremy. Jeremy, let's talk about some of the other sites that are out there, because one of the fun things about getting involved with a fan podcast, a TV show fan podcast, is interacting with the fandom. Now, there are multiple ways to do that. Twitter is one of the funnest ways to do that, but there's also fan websites that are out there. So we want to tell you about a few of the fan websites that we have discovered and spent some time on. And so I've got a few of them listed here. Jeremy, you want to give those out?
Yeah. Well, we have revolution-show.com. And one of my favorites also is 15darkyears.com. It's a 15darkyears.com. Mm-hmm. We've also got revolutiontvshow.com. And is this in English? EN?
You have to put the EN. I tried putting it without the EN, and I got an error page.
All right.
This is unfortunate. It's not a very friendly website address.
Okay, well, we'll have to go with the prefix en.revolution-wiki.com.
Yeah, so that one's going to be the equivalent to fringepedia.net, and I hope they get a better URL than that. en.revolution-wiki.com. Just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. Now, I will tell you that if you go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution, or we've made it even easier if you just go to the revolutionpodcast.com, it'll redirect you over to that. We have a list of these and other Revolution fan or Revolution official Revolution websites that are out there. So NBC's Revolution site, their what's it called, Pinterest page, and the Wikipedia page, all that stuff. We have them listed out for you over there. So go check that out over at goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. All right, couple of more quick things. There we go, to talk about in our news segment, and then we'll get into the episode. This one is really, really exciting. We tried to get this worked out for tonight, and I talked to him on the phone today at lunch, and we just could not get our schedules together. So we were going to have Tim Guinee on our podcast tonight. Tim plays the father who's shot. Spoiler alert! Sorry if you haven't seen the pilot. If you haven't seen the pilot yet, don't listen to this podcast. This will be a spoiler when it comes to the pilot episode, but nothing beyond that. But anyway, Tim Guinee, who plays Ben Matheson, we tried to get him on tonight. It just didn't work out, as I said. But so tomorrow, Jeremy and I will be interviewing him. We will not be in a situation where we can stream it, so there will not be a live podcast for that. But that means you're going to get a bonus episode of the Revolution podcast this week. So we're recording this on Tuesday night. This will be in the feed tonight on Tuesday. Every week it should be in the feed Tuesday night. And then the Tim Guinee interview will be in our feed on Thursday night. So bonus episode of the Revolution podcast this week, our interview with Tim Guinee. Can't wait. It's exciting.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and so here's this thing. I told you we'd get to this in just a minute, and this is kind of our regular routine. I hinted at it just a moment ago. The Revolution podcast is recorded live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we encourage you to come join us, watch us record the live show. We have the chat room going right now. We have several folks in there chatting away, chatting with us, and talking about the episode. So you can watch us do the live podcast and join in the live chat, and that's every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern over at goldenspiralmedia.com/live. And the other live event that we do is every Monday while Revolution is airing in the East and Central time zones. We have our chat room open at the same address, goldenspiralmedia.com/live. Folks are in there talking about the episode as it's airing and having a great time. Again, being a part of that fandom, that's so important when we do these TV show podcasts. The community that we have here at Golden Spiral Media is wonderful. Come be a part of it. So that's every Monday while the show is airing in East and Central time at goldenspiralmedia.com/live. And then every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we record the live show, same address, goldenspiralmedia.com/live. Okay?
All right. We also want to hear your theories and your feedback. If you can go ahead and give us a call, you can submit them at 304-837-2278, or you can email us at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. The deadline for submitting this feedback is at 6 p.m. Eastern each Tuesday so that we can have it ready for our episodes.
That's right. All right, so that's all we have for the news segment. The next little part of the podcast that we'll do each week is a very brief, pre-recorded episode recap. Ben Matheson comes home and frantically loads computer files onto a USB device. His wife Rachel realizes that it is happening. Ben calls his brother Miles and warns that everything is going to turn off. Miles has been out with his friend Bass, and then it happens. The entire world loses power. 15 years later, many have died, and those who survived have adjusted to a simpler, although less civilized way of life. Rachel is now dead, and Ben does what he can to protect his teenage son Danny and 20-year-old daughter Charlie. The warlord of the Monroe Republic sends his general Tom Neville to capture and return Ben. Ben tries to surrender, but Danny draws a gun and a fight ensues. In the scuffle, Ben is shot and killed. Danny is captured. Before Ben dies, he gives the USB device to one of the townspeople, Aaron. He tells Charlie to go to Chicago and find Miles. Aaron and Charlie are joined by the town doctor, Maggie. The group continues on to Chicago, adding a young man named Nate along the way. They locate Miles, however, he refuses to go with them. Nate turns out to be a spy working with the militia. Nate leaves but soon returns with a posse of militia fighters. Miles fights the posse and overtakes them. Having no other options, Miles agrees to join Charlie to find and rescue Danny. Meanwhile, Danny escapes from General Neville, but has an asthma attack and collapses in a field. A nearby resident named Grace finds him and nurses him back to health. Neville follows Danny's tracks to the farmhouse and recaptures Danny. He sends a message back to Monroe that Ben is dead and Danny has been captured. The courier delivers the message to Monroe and we see his face for the first time. It is Sebastian, aka Bass Monroe, Miles' former Marine buddy. Grace goes up to her attic and pulls out a device that looks just like the USB device Ben gave to Aaron, and it powers up a nearby computer. She types, "The militia was here." She receives the message, "Did they find it?" She types, "No," and receives the message, "So, what now?" All right, so there's the episode recap. So that gets us right in to our episode discussion for the pilot. All right, so this is just going to be kind of an open dialogue. Our thoughts. Jeremy and I do work together, so the opportunity for us to talk about the episode before we sit down in the studio here, well, it's there. And so we have talked a little bit about it, but ideally we're not going to talk about it too much. We want this to kind of be our first discussion about the pilot. Now, like I said earlier, the pilot came out 2 weeks ago or so we've had a couple of discussions about it. Now, I want to talk about the first podcast that we did, because at that point you had not seen the pilot, and I'd seen it twice when I was at Comic-Con, but that was it. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about some of the comments you made during that podcast, just to get them out of the way. The first thing I'm going to do is mention the Bugs Bunny cartoon that Charlie was watching at the beginning of the episode, which is interesting because all the stuff up until like a month before that aired, all that cartoon footage was Woody Woodpecker. And they changed it to Bugs Bunny at some point. But you see him, saying, "Here, Gremlin, here, Gremlin, Gremlin." So the name of that Bugs Bunny cartoon is called Falling Hare, Hare, of course, like a rabbit. There's a YouTube link. I will put that in the show notes. This is episode 2 of the Revolution podcast, so you can go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. And there you're going to see our podcasts, our blog, our polls. You can learn about the cast and all the information we have about Revolution. But I'll put a link to it over on YouTube so you can watch the entire cartoon. The only tie-in I could really see was that right before the scene that we see there happening in the episode, Bugs Bunny is reading a book about gremlins, and it says that gremlins make planes crash. And then, in the episode Revolution, the pilot, moments later after Charlie watches that, planes start falling from the sky. So that was really the only tie-in that I could come up with. Did you watch the Bugs Bunny cartoon? Did you think of anything else?
Well, I didn't really come up with anything other than that. I mean, it's an obvious connection.
Yeah.
Maybe the gremlins are the ones that caused the power outage. I'm kind of pushing that way. I don't know.
I see. Well, that's fine as long as you don't, get them wet or feed them after midnight.
And there you go.
All right. So I wanted to talk to you or ask you about a couple of things that you mentioned in the other podcast. And this isn't to beat you up in any way because you hadn't seen the pilot. It was really more just to kind of recover those comments that you made and then move forward from that. So
okay.
In that podcast, you mentioned that you hoped that at some point Charlie would find her parents. Now you've seen the pilot, so kind of tell us what you were expecting based on that comment, because you had only seen the trailers, and now kind of lead us into what you think might be the case with her parents.
Well, at the time, I was really under the impression that we might have both of them alive, or at least one of them. From the show, what we see apparently is the father is gone and the mother is gone. So it's almost a Owen Lars sort of a thing from Star Wars. She has nobody. It's not Luke. It's Charlie. But so you have that hunt. I was really hoping that she would go and find her parents, and they would kind of have that reveal. One of the things that I did pick up from the trailers, though, and I do have to say, my brother and a couple of other friends reinforced this with me, is I kind of think that Rachel Matheson is going to play the role of Darth Vader. We're going to see that.
What? She's going to don a black mask and a cape?
Indeed. She's going to have a lightsaber as well. But
Excellent. Is she going to have like a really deep, manly voice?
no, I don't think they could get James for this role. But
all right. So what do you mean by Rachel Matheson as Darth Vader? And incidentally, you said that, just to be clear, this is a theory you came up with before you saw the pilot,
right?
But after we recorded the last podcast,
right?
Yeah.
So, well, the whole Darth Vader scene, we see a lot of that in stories, but I believe that we're going to see her play an evil character at one point. She may be redeemed, but something that I think would be kind of a neat story element would be having the mom who's supposed to be dead actually not be dead and have changed sides. It could
so the dad told her that she was dead to protect her.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So
that would be fun. I mean, in a lot of ways, this story began, with some similarities to Star Wars, and we've got these notes that we've put together. And incidentally, I didn't read the article. I saw a tweet today that said Eric Kripke, who's the creator of this, has done that on purpose. He wants this to kind of be the Star Wars for television. It was what the headline said. I didn't go in and read all the article because I didn't want to skew any of our thoughts for tonight. We try really hard when we do this podcast to just bring our thoughts. If we're right, we're right. If we're wrong, we're wrong. But at least it's our stuff. And if it's the same as somebody else's, that's fine. But we arrived at it independently. You know what I mean? So I didn't spend any time reading the article, but that would be cool. I mean, that would make us feel like, I say we, it's really you. I mean, you started this dialogue, and I've kind of been, mulling it over, and I like it a whole lot. Of course, we got the Return of the Jedi lunchbox as a probable clue to this, or at least a clue to clue us in on the allegory that's being told here, or the similar storyline, maybe a better way of putting that, with this story and Star Wars. I mean, you have this young lady who has this adventuresome spirit, Luke Skywalker. Her parents are killed, and she's thrust into this journey. Luke Skywalker, Now, we don't know, then she meets this guy who at a bar who can help her. Han
Sounds
Solo.
like Han Solo to me.
You know what I mean? So I definitely see a lot of parallels there. Now, is she going to be able to wield this mysterious life energy with midichlorians? I doubt it.
I refuse to believe in midichlorians, but maybe she learns how to use the device. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It almost reminds, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but it almost reminds me of the clicker in Harry Potter.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
I haven't read a single Harry Potter book or seen a Harry Potter movie.
To me, I say a clicker. It may just be a wand, but at one point, Dumbledore, who's the main wizard, gives after certain events in the books, gives a character, I believe, named Ron, this clicker.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But it's able to turn the lights on and off. So maybe it is some form of I don't know, maybe kind of a magic. It's not really magic, but we really don't have an explanation right now. So
no, we don't. Let me ask you this, since you bring it up. Is why the power went out? Why did the power go out? Is that the ultimate mystery that we won't find out until season 6, and then we'll find it was some sort of weird light thing in a cave? Or is it something that is not the be-all, end-all mystery, and therefore we might see it resolved this season even? What do you think?
Well, I'm afraid that it's going to be one that we're going to find out the very last thing. In a similar show I've seen, Battlestar Galactica, you have a lot of questions that go unanswered until the very end.
Right.
But whether or not this is the actual end-all, be-all quest, I think the ultimate quest is going to be turning it on. But I think you'll know why before the end of season 2.
You'll know why what?
Why the power is off.
Okay.
So,
but they won't necessarily be able to get it back on.
No.
But we'll know why.
Yes, we'll know why.
Okay.
And we'll probably know how to get it on.
Yeah,
But
the audience will know more. Yeah.
The character
That's
might
pretty
not.
typical. So you're saying by the end of season 2? Is
Yes.
that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say by the end of season 1.
It's pretty bold.
Well, I don't know. It's just been one episode, so whatever. But I don't think it's the be all end all mystery. And beyond that, I've been watching Twitter since it last night after it aired, and I'm sorry for the Fringe fans who were irritated at all my Revolution tweets last night. But I was watching Twitter pretty heavily last night, and I saw a lot of criticism. For those that were critical, a lot of it was that this is totally implausible. I mean, because, and we'll get into some of this, because electricity is more than just car engines and computers and iPhones, and even more than that, it wouldn't have happened in the way that it did. And so I think to answer that criticism, it's got to come out sooner. And I have read that I don't know if it was Kripke or who it was, but the people running the show brought in a physicist, or maybe a couple, but at least one, and said, "Here's our idea." They did this from the very beginning. "Here's our idea. Here's what we think would cause it. Is this plausible? Is this scientifically plausible?" And they got a green light from a physicist. Okay. Now, Aaron in the episode says that physics went crazy after the blackout, but at least there is a plausibility, and that's what science fiction is, right? It's not actual fact.
Right.
We can talk about blasters and noises in space and all that stuff, but, there's a plausibility to it. And that's really all that we need in order to have then we can suspend our belief, right?
Right.
Or disbelief. So I think we're going to get that answered, fairly early, by the end of season 1, so that people won't be irritated about that for years and years and years, because I don't think it's the main point of the story, and I don't think it's the main mystery.
Well, I'd really like to hear what you think's the main mystery.
Well, maybe not the main mystery, but the main
Okay.
the main purpose.
Okay.
So, like you said, the power is out. We'll figure out why, but that doesn't mean it's going to get restored right away.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the power struggles and that the sides who have their own motives and their own purposes for wanting to do it, what they're going to do with it when they get it restored, all that conflict is going to still be there. And so that'll be the resolution of how it all comes about, and how does it resolve. That's what will happen over 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 seasons, whatever it gets. But the fact that how did the power outage occur, I think we'll get that before the end of season 1.
All right. Well, that's a very good reasoning behind it. I like your structure there and your argument.
Right.
So I think you could convince me. So
Wow, listen to that, Clint. I never convinced Clint. This is new territory for me to be in here, folks. I don't know how to respond to that.
maybe I'm weak-minded.
I'm using my Jedi mind tricks
Yes.
on you. All right, let's talk about the Monroe Republic. I have questions for you here. What is it? How big is it? And what about the U.S. and local government? And how does that all fit in? What do you think is the political and political is not even the best word, really, but just who's in charge of the U.S. and how is it structured nowadays in the context of revolution, of course?
Of course. Well, the U.S. and local governments, I'm going to say that all of the local governments are pretty much gone. You're going to see the guys with the guns who rule the place.
Okay.
As a United States government, I'm gonna say that there's probably more out there. There's probably somebody holding on to that idea. It's only 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the closer you get to Maryland and that part of the East Coast, I think you're going to have more of a centralized military presence that's probably more structured. When you look at the Monroe Public from the reveal, can I jump that far ahead already?
Oh, sure.
Well, from the reveal, we see, he's, what rank was he? Do we write that down?
Was it general? I'll look it up real quick while you're continuing.
Right. I believe he's a General Monroe, but I don't believe that he actually attained that rank in a nice manner, I guess would be a way to say it.
All right.
It was probably at the point of a spear, essentially. But when he checks in at the base at the end, I would like to know, I should have paid attention a little bit, what rank he is there. Was he a staff sergeant or something like that? To me, I kind of question, how does he make that rise up, and how does this republic
Right.
follow him?
Because he seems pretty young. Like, he definitely wouldn't have had the highest position in the Marines when the blackout occurred. So I am with you. I think he either used, force or wits, a combination of the two, influence to gain. He is general, according to the Revolution Wiki, which was at en.revolution-wiki.com. General Sebastian Bass Monroe. So I think we're on the same page there. So you're thinking local law enforcement, local government is gone. I agree. You think there's some sort of, although weak, U.S. government still in place around the original 13 colonies area, maybe.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I could totally go for that. So the further west you go, the further lawless, the more lawless it is.
Yeah, I'd say almost like a Old West.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to see some of that if they ever make it that far.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how far. That's kind of the cool thing about this show. Right now, we're focused. It's the pilot. We're focused around the Chicago area. Given that next week's episode was called Pontiac, Illinois, I think we're staying in Illinois. And Pontiac, I think, is about 150 miles away from Chicago. But man, we could go elsewhere in the U.S. We could go worldwide. It looked like it was a worldwide blackout based on the graphic that they did there. So yeah, there's really a lot of potential to see how this is affecting, the entire world.
Right. I'd like to also see. This just popped into my head, but what about space? What about satellites? Things like that? Do they come crashing down? Is there anything up there that I don't know if they haven't revealed? I mean, secret projects, things that cause power to go out. That sort of thing.
That would be interesting. I mean, they would have to have a way to get supplies up to space. Let's say the space station, for example.
Right.
I mean, those guys would run out of supplies at some point.
Right. They'd have wasted away already.
Right.
So,
but if they still had a way to get supplies up there, would mean that they would have to have power of some sort to do that.
Right.
Yeah. That would be interesting.
I'm more thinking degrading orbits, things like that.
Oh, okay.
So,
I got you.
Falling stuff.
Falling skies?
Yeah.
A different show, man. All right. Let's move on from that. Okay. This is an idea that I had, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we got some feedback from one of our listeners, and they had the same thought. So this is just, I'll just kind of read it, and then we'll move on and let the listener take it in our feedback segment. But I'm thinking that maybe someone thinks that the world has progressed too far and in the wrong direction. Whatever their moral compass is, they're not happy with the way that mankind has gone. So mankind rarely looks at its progress and says, I've made a mistake, I need to go back. Mankind is always looking forward, trying to progress. And so whoever it was maybe had the ability, figured out a way to force a step back. And this person has some sort of different ideology or something like that. So that's kind of one theory that I have of as to why or who or how it may have happened.
I think it's a plausible theory. It's got some solid ground to it if you find somebody in power like that. I don't know if we've mentioned on this particular podcast, but my book actually has some similarities in the end of the world. So,
and your book, if you didn't listen to our first podcast, one of the reasons I selected Jeremy to be my co-host for this podcast was because he has an interest in sci-fi and an interest in cool TV and film, but he's also writing a book that's very similar to the plot line that we have here in Revolution. So when he talks about his book, that's what he's talking about. It's a book, how long have you been working on this thing?
Too long.
We won't say, okay.
Probably about 8 years. So,
all right. Let's talk about some of the kind of the things that we liked or didn't like, just some of the smaller things that we saw in the episode. One thing that I didn't like, it got kind of old for me, was I was going to say Aaron. It's the brothers, Danny. His asthma attack. He had 2 of them in one episode, and I think the first one was to kind of help us understand that he has asthma, so that when the second one came along, there was context for it. So I'm okay with it, but he's a good, strong kid. I don't want this to be the thing that always causes him to stumble. You know what I mean? I understand asthma is very real. They don't have the inhalers. I mean, she had one. I understand that, but those aren't around. We saw Maggie do some sort of homemade remedy for him,
Mm-hmm.
but that's going to get old for me real quick. If anytime he's called on to do something strenuous, asthma is his kryptonite, if you will.
Right.
I don't know. What did that bug you too, or what were your thoughts on that?
It bugged me quite a bit myself.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. So I didn't like the fact that it almost felt like a crutch.
Uh-huh.
It does have potential for a character development, I believe, as well as, I mean, it could save the world from aliens, or at least you. I mean, I guess the water in Signs saves the world, but I guess spoiler alert, but if you haven't seen Signs, the boy has asthma. So,
Yes. That's actually a movie that I've seen and I enjoy very much.
all right.
Yeah. You know, some of the M. Night Shyamalan movies have been better than others. That's like my third or fourth favorite one of his. I mean, you got to put Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense 1 and 2, right?
I would have to agree.
And then that's my third favorite. Clint and I diverged from there. I mean, everyone seems to say Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense are the top two, but
So maybe Bruce Willis is the reason we like it?
maybe so.
All right.
There is a common factor there between those two.
Indeed.
All right. Any other thoughts on the Danny and the asthma thing?
I'm not sure how the water he was drinking was causing the asthma, or if it was in the air. We see some stuff floating around that scene.
I think, I think it was more of the looked like cottonwood trees. We have cottonwood trees here in Oklahoma. I don't know if they're in the north much, but they're definitely in the south. And they put these big balls. That's why they're called cottonwood. Their seeds are these big balls and they travel in the air and they fill up, and a lot of people have allergic reactions to them. So that's what I thought was going on. It looked like cottonwood seeds to me, or maybe even a large supply of dandelion seeds in the air. But that was a lot for dandelions.
All right. Well, that explains that then.
Yeah, but Maggie's, her little potion was a drink with.
I'm not sure how that actually handles a inhalant sort of.
I'm not either, and I'm not really going to be a stickler on that. The idea was that they've learned how to do some home remedies. I think that was the point of that, and so that's something that comes into play. It showed us a little bit about Maggie. She's the town doctor, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, but I had hoped that Ben was still alive, the dad. But when you figure that, he didn't. He died with his eyes open, which they do on TV all the time. I don't like it, but that when the town doctor and your lover leaves you there, pretty sure he's dead.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but we'll have him in the flashbacks, right?
So. I hope so. We'll ask him tomorrow when we talk to him. So she's the town doctor. She's got these skills. She's got the really cool poison whiskey that she gets those guys to drink, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, her knowledge of medicine may not be as good as her knowledge of poisons. Maybe she's not really a doctor.
I don't think she's all that she seems.
Yeah, I think there's more to this character.
There's definitely more. She invited herself to go along with Charlie.
Right.
Okay, so here's my little theory on Maggie. She told Charlie, you can't trust anyone. You never trust the person who tells you can't trust anyone. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so now I don't know if she knows that Aaron has the gizmo. I don't know if she knows that or not. But she knows that Charlie is going to go get Danny. Not Danny, excuse me, Miles. And Miles is the guy who can get them where they need to go, right? And help get Danny back. So she's going to go along with it. I think she might have even been planted to watch Ben. She might have been the reason that Tom and Monroe knew where Ben was or knew what he had. You know what I mean? I think she might be a total spy through and through.
I like that theory.
You like that?
I can't really expound upon it because I've not really given that any thought.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If you have her being Darth Vader, then you can't really have Rachel, right?
She might be the Sith Lord or something.
Okay. So who's the master and who's the...
I'm just trying to throw out Star Wars references. I shouldn't do that with you. You'll destroy me in like 3 seconds. Yeah.
I'll give you 4.
Oh, you're so merciful. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
All right. The other thing that kind of annoyed me about the pilot is Charlie's overzealous sense of family. Now, it didn't bug me as much when I really tried to step aside and say, put myself in Charlie's shoes. This girl has just lost her dad. just lost her dad and then has no time to grieve, has to go on this journey. I cannot imagine the emotion that I would be going through. But I know that I would be emotionally, I would be a wreck, and I would have pinned all my hope on my father's dying words, which were to go find Miles. He can help you. So that if I then got to Miles and Miles blew me off, the despair that I would feel, because that was my only hope, and now I've got nothing. Like she just said, my mother is dead. My father is dead. My brother has been kidnapped. And if that guy who's my only hope, Obi-Wan, I guess. No, we said he was Han Solo.
It could be Obi-Wan.
If he then rejects me, I think I would have more of an emotional breakdown than she had in that scene. When I first saw it, the first couple of times I saw it, I thought she overplayed that scene. And Clint and I may even mention that during our Comic-Con podcast. But after I took a step back and kind of evaluated where I would be emotionally if I were on her journey, I think I would have been more broken than what she expressed. I think she did a really good job. And I think some people will fall on either way on that. But having said all that, her family, gung-ho, blah, 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 we're family, blah, 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 family, it was getting a little old. So when Miles at the end of the episode said, look, you're going to have to back it down a notch, I was so glad. I was so glad he said that because I was thinking the same thing. Did you have the same opinion on that?
I don't think I felt as strongly about it, but I was glad that he told her to back off, step down, if you will. I don't know if that's a Seinfeld thing or not, but no, I think that it's good that she has a family-oriented lifestyle. I think that it's all close to her.
Sure.
But when it's all falling apart, honestly, I'd probably be a lot more trigger happy than she is.
Okay.
So I think the character, while maybe playing that too much, also seemed rather calm for losing all of her family as well. So
yeah, and I like that adventuresome spirit that she has. I like that she's strong. She's incredibly naive. She's going to have to be careful. I mean, Aaron, he's the Hurley of the show. I don't know how much of Lost have you seen?
I've seen enough to know that the ending wasn't what I was hoping for.
Oh man, how did I ever pick you as a co-host? Yeah, so if I throw out Hurley, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay, so I think that Aaron, which is played by Zach Orth, I think he is going to be the comic relief, the person that everybody identifies with. For Fringe, that's Astrid, the Jessica Nicole character, the one that every man can put themselves in that position. He's not a fighter.
That's shown from the scene when he actually fights.
Exactly. So she's not going to be able to count on him to do much for her. Maggie could win a battle of wits. I don't know how much she would win a battle of arms. So you got Miles now. It's a good thing she's got Miles because I think she could potentially get herself into some trouble because she's so gung-ho but she's so green, But she'll probably pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah. She'll learn the ways of the Force.
She will. I like what you did there.
Yes.
All right, well, let's talk about those fight scenes. What were your thoughts on... We had two major fight scenes, right? We had the one in the village, and we had the one at the hotel. So what were your thoughts on that?
Well, the village one, I'd have shot Tom first.
Uh-huh.
That's just me. But the actual fight scene itself, it seemed a little... not so stiff, but I don't know if you can find a better word, but it didn't feel completely fluid to me.
Okay.
Few people were just not striking hard enough, maybe. Who knows?
Okay.
The second one in the hotel, I thought it was pretty slick. He had the upper hand. He had the high ground, if you will.
Right. Another Star
Wars reference. Sorry, guys. So, I mean, he had a lot of the knowledge that anybody who is unfamiliar with his little pub or whatever you would call it wouldn't have. So I like the pulling out the crossbow and shooting the guy from behind the bookshelf or whatever that was.
Nice.
So it was pretty smooth.
Yeah.
So a lot of neat little things that he did there. It was very fluid. In a way, it kind of reminded me of a stiffer version of River from Serenity.
Okay.
he's not quite as fluid as she is either.
Yeah.
But I think overall for a TV fight scene, I was very happy to have some good, nice, fun action.
Yeah. I agree. I thought the second fight scene there with Miles was fantastic. It was so well choreographed. Now, is it realistic that one guy could take out, I don't know how many guys there were, 15, 20 guys?
My wife said no.
Yeah. I would say no, but I will give a couple of caveats here. Number one, we had the context that all that Charlie knew about Uncle Miles was that he was good at killing people.
Right.
Now, did his Marine training involve skill with a sword? No. But that was the context. He's good at killing people. Okay, so there was at least that. Point two, and you mentioned it, he had the hidden crossbow. He used, and he knew the terrain. He knew the layout of the facility. He used the stairs and the columns to his advantage and to gain the upper hand. And so the hidden weapons and the knowledge of the terrain were used wisely. I'll give him that too.
Yep.
And the third thing I will say is he didn't kill all those people. Now, it was only one guy, but he was about to get clocked, and Charlie came in and saved him. It was just one guy that she did there, but at least it showed that he couldn't do it all on his own. Now, it was still far-fetched.
Right.
But it was awesome. I'm okay with that. Is it plausible? Yes. Is it a little bit over the top? Yes.
Sometimes you need over the top, though.
That's okay. That makes for good TV sometimes.
Yes, it does.
And we're okay with that. Now, the village scene, I had a couple of other problems with. I hoped that they would do a little bit better editing from what I saw at Comic-Con, and they didn't do it. There was a shot where a guy got hit with a crossbow arrow, and he flew back like 20 feet with his feet straight out. That's not even possible with a gun if you've seen that episodes of Mythbusters,
Right.
So that was a little over the top. There was you could tell he was like on a rope or being pulled by a stunt rope or something. There's another shot that was the exact same thing. I think he got hit by a shovel or a pickaxe or something, and he flew back. And those two stunts just bugged me. They were too over the top. They weren't realistic at all. Just crumble to the ground or fall. I didn't need, I didn't need the over the top stuff.
Right. Yeah. So.
The other thing that bothered me about the village fight scene is that Ben got shot. He should have told his men, and I'm sure he did. We're taking him alive. Monroe wants him alive. So whoever shot the dad instead of the kid who's got the gun needs to be shot by Tom.
Well, he was shot by the crossbow as well as the guy.
That's the guy. I didn't go back and really look to see if it was the same guy. But, yeah, that's stupid. You said Tom should have got shot first. Second shot fired should have been Tom. Or if Danny's going to shoot somebody, it should be Tom. I can't argue with that. But whoever shot Ben, idiot. Now, yeah. I'm not promoting that we shoot young men or children on this show or any show. But I'm just saying, logically, that would have been the guy you would have shot.
Yeah, I agree. He made kind of some unwise decisions. Yeah. I know that the music was a cue. Everybody could see it coming. Yeah. And it's got to happen. But, yeah, I think that having somebody like that under my command who's quite a bit trigger happy.
Yeah.
I think you stop him. I don't know if a crossbow bolt is going to really kill you that quickly. I think depending on where it hit you, but
right.
I think that you have one kid with a crossbow and one old man with a musket. They've got two shots.
Right.
What we saw Tom pull out was what looked like a 50 caliber Desert Eagle pistol. And I'm thinking, well, there's enough for intimidation there. You don't even need to waste the ammo.
That's right. He pulls that guy out, fires one shot into the air. The tension is broken. Everybody stands down.
Right.
But at the same time, when he pulls that thing out, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to watch in a way.
It was. But, you're right. It was pretty violent.
It was awesome in a way as well. Good sound, good looks, and it definitely quieted.
And it developed his character so much.
It made you really want him to go.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to develop a character. So.
Yeah. Favorite line of that scene was, carrying a firearm as a hanging offense, and then the guy says, "Go hang yourself." That might be up for quote of the week.
It's my quote of the week.
Yeah, it's a good one. But let's talk about Tom. He had a couple of scenes. That one there where he talks to Ben about the kind of day he's had and how he wants to get home to his family. There was also the scene where he has with Danny and talks about how the militia leader, I'm drawing a blank here.
Monroe.
Thank you. Is going to have his head. I love Danny's response there. But then there was also the scene that he had at the end of the episode with Grace at the farmhouse. And both of those, I thought, did such a wonderful job. He and Grace in that scene, they did so much with their facial expressions and their body language and their the positioning of themselves. But I would say I thought Giancarlo Esposito delivered the best performance of anyone in this episode. Do you have any thoughts on a performance that stood out or a scene that stood out for you?
Well, for him, it was definitely when he's talking to her at the front door. When he's talking to Grace. Yeah. I'm just like, man, he's cold.
Yeah.
He comes up and just tells her, "Hey, I'm a calculated insurance."
He was an insurance adjuster, yeah.
And I'm okay with killing hundreds of people in cold blood. That's kind of how I felt about it, and I thought that was very powerfully delivered. And I know that if I were Monroe, I'd be afraid of that man.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily be his general, but man.
Yeah, you want him on your team for sure.
Yes.
I meant to say something in our last podcast, and I failed to do it. I wanted to talk about him a little bit more, and it wasn't in the show notes, and I go stupid if it's not in the show notes. But he said something, Giancarlo said something at Comic-Con that was really cool, because when I saw it, Clint and I watched the pilot on Wednesday night at preview night, and then we also went to the Revolution panel, which was on Saturday, if I remember correctly. And so we watched the pilot again there, and then they had about 10 or 15 minutes with Giancarlo Esposito and Eric Kripke and Tracy Spiridakos, who plays Charlie, and Billy Burke, who plays Miles. And one of the things that Giancarlo said was that if you think about his character in this episode, he comes across as a pretty evil, take no prisoners kind of guy. But if you look at some of the subtlety of what he said, particularly with this conversation with Ben, he's got a wife at home that he very much wants to get home to. And he thinks, and from his perspective, from the perspective of Tom, the lights went out. Somebody's responsible for it. Life is not better because of it. A lot of people died when it happened. We need to bring those people to justice. We need to get the power back on. He might probably think that he is on the good side. And you can make a really strong argument for that. And just that thought alone, putting him into perspective a little bit, adds a whole lot of more complexity and layers to his character.
I believe it does.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what he does with it. He's so awesome.
Forgive me for my inability to name the character, but he kind of reminds me of the bad guy in Firefly, or not Firefly, excuse me, Serenity. Do you recall his name?
You're going to ask me to recall something from Firefly over you?
I've stumped myself in my head.
Good night, dude. No, I couldn't off the top of my head.
In the end...
not the Blue Man. Not the Bounty Hunter.
No, not early.
Early is
Early's
awesome.
the...
he's in Objects in Space.
Yes.
Anyway, Simon. Not Simon. That's her brother. Anyway, chat room, if you guys think of it, let us know. We're not going to take up time with that.
Right. The guy with the sword. Was it lately? No. Anywho, he has that kind of a conflicted... He really believes he's on the right side. Right. Personally, though, I don't believe that Tom necessarily has a family. It kind of came across to me as an excuse, an appeal to the family man. Just come with me quietly. I didn't really feel that he really had a heart for a family. Now, you're probably right, I could say, but he was just so cold that maybe his family's dead. Yeah. And maybe he kind of holds on to them that he has a family, but I don't see anybody like him having a family casually murders people. Okay. But who knows? So.
We have from the Mad Hatter. It's just the operative is all we have on that. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's been too long ago since I've seen the movie.
It's not been long enough. Well, no, excuse me. It's been too long.
Been too long. Yeah, and I don't remember little details like that long term.
Right.
I forget them. Okay, a couple of other things here we want to talk about. A subtle little thing. I don't know how subtle it was, but Aaron had this AC/DC shirt, which I thought was awesome. Alternating current, direct current. Electricity. I don't think it was as much about the band as it was just a little Easter egg about electricity. There's not any. Here's this guy wearing an AC/DC shirt. The irony is just awesome.
It was very thick there. But,
yeah,
and he's the quote unquote physics teacher or something as well. So he's the nerd. I
guess. The nerd. Used to work for Google.
Right.
That was another great line. I worked for this company called Google. Had $80 million in the bank. I'd give it all now for a roll of Charmin.
Yes. Well, I want to know if he worked for Google or owned Google. $80 million is quite a bit of money there.
If he was in the beginning and then got the stock options, maybe who knows? But that's a ton of cash, and that was a great line. That one also may be up for quote of the week.
I'd put it at 2.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. I talked about Tom, how much I'm looking forward to getting to know him more. Bass is another one. We talked about him being so young and how did he get into that position. I can't wait to learn more about that. And Grace, who is the lady at the farmhouse at the end, she seems to be in some sort of position of power because they are asking, no pun intended, they're asking her, what do we do now? Okay. So that'll be really interesting. She has a flash drive, or she has a device that looks very much, looks identical, I guess, to the one that Ben has. But we know that Ben's is a flash drive. If it's the same one that he had at his house. I mean, it didn't have the one he gave Aaron didn't have the lines where the flash drive comes out. These are props, so I'm going to give him a pass on that. But is it the same type of thing? Does hers have a flash drive in it too? Or is it more of a symbol? Is it like an underground following or a cult or I don't know, cult may not be the best word, but I think you know what I mean. There's a secret society might be a better word for it, that have these, and this is their symbol, because hers seemed to how would you describe the effect that it had? Is there some sort of electrical distortion field going on that's causing things not to work, and it dampens that and allows something within a radius to work? Or was it a power source?
To me, it actually felt a lot like what you just described. It was a dampener, I guess, what you would call it. It enabled the magnetic fields or whatever to work again, which makes me beg the question, how does a flash drive do that? It's just software. But it's very interesting that that happens. I do not believe that it's a battery, that it actually powers anything.
Okay.
But we do know physics is messed up, so the laws of thermodynamics and anything like that would not necessarily still work. Yeah. So
I think, and we're getting this in the chat room. Mad Hatter says that she has electricity, or and Rev1 says she has a battery. I think either of those are possible, and that it's a dampening and it's allowing that circuitry to work. It sounds like you and I are on the same page there. And then we talked about Maggie, the kind of what could be there. I threw out my theory about, how she could be the true villain here or a spy. So those are the characters, Tom and Bass, Grace, and Maggie. Those are the 4 characters that I'm kind of keeping my eye on the most. Okay. We talked about the flash drive. Do you see Ben and Grace? Can you make any connection between the two right now?
My only connection is that they probably worked at the same place.
Okay.
So you have that device. I'd imagine that they have some hand in responsibility for the events. Even if they did nothing to do it, they have knowledge of what happened.
Yeah.
But other than anything like that, I can't really see why they would have any connection.
Okay. Yeah, I can't quite make the connection either. I like what you said there. They could have worked together. I think that's definitely a possibility. Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other notes you have?
Well, I think that Maggie being what looks to be her 30s, about 35 or
30,
so.
35, I would say.
Would put her probably between 15 and 20 when the events happen. So I'd like to see how she grew up being somebody that we could describe as being raised on computers. Any generation really before 21 nowadays had a point in time where they were raised before computers, or they weren't really dominant in their lives, and,
Sure.
and they would know what a floppy drive is. Anybody younger than 21 really struggles to remember a world without a computer.
Right.
It's become increasingly difficult to not remember that. I mean, Windows has been around your entire life, so that's something to think about. I think I'd like to see Maggie and her reactions to the power. You have a young girl in Charlie,
Right.
a young boy in Danny. They were young enough to enjoy the ice cream.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
And he cries when I did not catch what he was using, but it looked like he was playing on something, like a Game Boy or something. When that runs out, it upsets him.
Right.
But they really, don't have any memories of power.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of potential with both of those characters. But Maggie, to me, I think I'd like to see more development in all of the characters, but especially her.
Okay. I can't wait to see what we learn through flashback. We'll have the opportunity to learn about the characters, which will have a Lost feel. The cool thing that Lost did with the first couple of seasons with flashbacks is you saw them interacting with each other, and they were complete strangers and didn't know it and don't remember it. I doubt we go that route. In fact, I hope they don't go that route. That was really cool for Lost, but if they duplicate that style of flashback, it's going to be a little too much. It'd be seeming like they're trying too hard to be like Lost. But flashback is a really cool way to have storytelling occur in a show. So you're in the present, learning what these people are going through, and they have these triggers. It's very typical the way they do flashback stuff. So she saw the ice cream in the cooler in the RV, and that flashed her back. That was cool. But it'll be really cool to see how the exposition develops the backstory through flashback.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And just to say something, I don't know if I can go ahead and interrupt. There's no segue into this, but Rev 1 mentions the Matrix, and I think that's actually kind of a neat idea. If this is actually the Matrix 4, at the end, they're just put back into the Matrix. That'd be kind of interesting to see. Way out there theory. There's really only one Matrix, but I don't know. Maybe they're actually being trained by the robots to not desire power.
I hope not.
I hope not too.
It's too early to shoot down theories. They can go in so many different ways, and
I don't think they're going that way.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that. But that's just kind of an interesting little thing he pokes out there, and I don't know if he meant that entirely. But
okay. All right. Anything else?
I think that's all for mine.
All right. So we don't really have. That's all I have too. We don't really have any music for this next segment. I need to get something together. I'm going to create a montage as we get enough quotes to do this. But for right now, we don't have any quotes that have been established. But like I mentioned, as we're doing kind of our episode discussion, we do this in our Fringe podcast. We take quotes that we've liked out of each episode, and we'll play them for you. We have 4 quotes each week, and then we have a quote of the week poll. That'll be over on our website at goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. You'll see the polls tab right there in the middle of the page, and the quote of the week will be up every week. And so what we'll do is we'll play the 4 quotes. The poll will be up. We'll announce on Twitter when it's up for your voting pleasure. And then on the next podcast, we'll announce the winner, and we'll have 4 new quotes for you to choose from. So our first quote for this week is, "Are we clear?"
I'm here under the orders of General Sebastian Monroe himself. He personally asked me to find 2 men. You and your brother.
Hold on just a second.
I'm going to have to ask you to come with us under the authority of the Monroe Republic.
Why?
Do I have to repeat myself?
I just don't understand.
Here's what you need to understand. I have been searching for you for a very long time through mud and filth, away from my home and my wife and my bed. So I'm in a mood. I'm sure you can understand that. So do yourself a favor and climb in that wagon. Or For so help me, I will conscript all of your children, and I will re-educate them until they no longer remember your names. Are we clear?
I can't believe you say that he doesn't seem like a family guy. He's such a wholesome family guy.
I just feel the warmth off of his words.
That's right. All right, this next one is Go Hang Yourself.
Danny, stop.
I suppose this is your boy?
And my daddy didn't do anything.
Danny, put it down.
You don't want any trouble, just
Easy
go,
now.
please.
Danny, look at me.
Tell him to put his gun down. Put his gun. Tell him to put his gun
Danny,
down.
I said put it down.
Kid's got a point, Ben! How about they put theirs down?
Sir, owning a firearm is a hanging offense.
So go hang yourself.
That guy that says the kid's got a point, Ben, it sounds like he could say, "We're going to have to take the boy." He sounds just like Tom Friendly from Lost to me, just the quality of his voice. All right, the next one here is A Roll of Charmin.
No, come on. They usually had a doctor's kit up front. Good meds.
How do you know?
I, owned one. A plane.
Seriously?
Yeah. I used to work at this place called Google.
That was a computer thing, right?
Now, it's nothing. $80 million in the bank, and I would trade it all right now for a roll of Charmin.
All right. And did you notice there was a Charmin commercial? I don't know if it was that next commercial break or the one after it.
It was the very next commercial
Was it?
break. I pointed it out in the chat last night.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Yeah. Wonder how much they paid for that. And the final quote for this week is "We're family."
No, look, I'm begging you.
Your brother is bait. You understand that? I go after it. Not good for him. Or for me. I, for one, would like to keep my insides on the inside.
No, look, I have lost everyone that I care about. My mom is dead. My dad is dead. And God knows what they're doing to Danny right now. So you are gonna help me get him back.
Why's that?
Because we're family.
Family? Kid, I don't even know you.
Ouch. All right, so as I said, all four of those quotes will be up on our website, goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. You can go and get your vote on. That will be up typically Tuesday nights. It may bleed over into Wednesday, but we will tweet when we have that poll available. Our Twitter ID is GSM Podcasts, like Golden Spiral Media Podcasts. So go follow us over there, and then we'll announce when we have the poll up for you. All right, Jeremy, I almost called you Clint. Sorry, man. You ready to do some feedback?
I suppose so.
All right. I love this new music.
All right.
I might also say that my kids love the feedback music. I posted a video, I tweeted it last night, or put it in the chat room maybe, whichever it was. But I was playing it and they were dancing along with it. They were like doing the robot with their arms dangling and just weird, silly stuff, but it's a lot of fun. All right, so we have some feedback tonight. We're going to get it kicked off with Chris.
Hey guys, this is Chris from New York, and I'm calling for the Revolution podcast. I just wanted to really quickly give my thought of the pilot episode. I actually saw it maybe a week or so ago, since it's been on NBC's website. It aired obviously tonight, Monday night. But yeah, I just wanted to give my quick thoughts about it. I'm not totally hooked yet. I mean, I'm interested and I'm gonna watch, but it wasn't like Fringe or some other shows were for me, where right at the pilot episode I was instantly involved and hooked and, you know, really, really, really deeply immersed into it. This, you know, I'm not too involved yet. I'm slightly interested. I mean, a lot of people were like really, 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 really excited about the ending, and I noticed that mostly on Twitter, where people were kind of just freaking out about the ending, saying, "Oh, I never saw that coming, whoa." And I think me being such a cultured JJ fan, I mean, I've seen pretty much everything except for Undercovers and Alcatraz. I watched the first couple episodes about the Travs lost interest, really was bored out of my mind and never finished the season. And Undercovers I never tried, but Felicity, Alias, Lost, Fringe, I'm big fans of all those. And, but, I mean, in Lost, obviously we had the computer down in the hatch, the old computer. And then on Fringe we saw the old interdimensional typewriter and then also the old dinosaur computer that Nina was seen communicating with Belle on. And that was also interdimensionally. And so, I mean, the big mystery of what's up with this old computer and, it really didn't faze me. It wasn't a big deal to me. So I'm hoping for more mysteries, more clues, kind of just like a bigger mystery, I guess. So I guess that's all I have to say about it, and thanks a lot for listening, guys. Bye.
It's interesting. JJ he gets criticized for using lens flares over the top, and everything has a plane crash in it. So will these green screen computers, are they now the token JJ thing that has to be put into every project that he does?
Sounds like it. It kind of makes me want to go back and watch Alias and not really Felicity, but and see if there are any green screens there.
Yeah, I never watched either of those. I doubt they'd be in Felicity. I could see him coming into play in Alias, but that's the thing, Chris. I mean, pilots, and we all know this. You cannot judge a show by its pilot. Now, hopefully, a pilot is good enough to get you excited. You said that Fringe did that for you, and Lost did that for me, and Fringe as well. And did this have the same effect on me that those shows had? Honestly, no, it didn't. I ended up watching. I've now seen the pilot 7 times. I know I'm a little bit obsessive sometimes, but I honestly liked it more each time I saw it because maybe I'm slow, but I noticed new things every time I watched it. But did it still hit me like those did? No, but it also was very, very dense. There was a whole lot here. They were presenting these characters and this blackout and trying to roll in this mystery to it, hit you with a couple of cool things at the end to bring you back next week. So, and like I said, I know you know this, but pilots are hard. They have so much exposition to lay down with a short time because they have to bring the audience up to speed. And this show isn't for everybody. There'll be people who love Fringe who will hate this show, and that's completely okay. So it sounded like you said you were going to give it several more episodes, and hopefully it'll become a show you like just as much as those others. But only time will tell.
Indeed, yes.
Sorry, I didn't leave you much of a thing to say there. All right, I'm going to read this one from Mike. This is an email we got in, and Mike says, well, though Revolution is, as of tonight, no Fringe, it does show some promise. I'm really interested in finding out what caused the blackout, and I'm leaning toward it being man-made. I came to that conclusion when the algebra teacher pulled out her own pendant/USB drive, presumably, and activated the electrical devices around her by pressing its power button, an effect distortion field with a limited range around the user. That's what he thinks, and that's the same theory we have. I'm also interested in the militia, learning what happened to the U.S. government, learning more about Billy Burke's character, etc. Now to the problems. Number 1, too pretty and polished for a post-apocalypse. Number 2, one man taking on 10 or more? Really? Even with military training? Come on. Number 3, the scene where the militia is chopping at Charlie. How many unsuccessful chops before he stabs at her? That was a joke. Also, he didn't hit her fingers even once? Of course, I'll give Revolution at least 3 more episodes before I make up my mind. I really hope it gets grittier and a lot less pretty and packaged for the lowest common denominator. Have a great day. So what do you think about Mike's comments there, Jeremy?
Well, the problems, I'd have to say, were pretty much where I was. The prettiness, the ACD shirt 15 years later has no holes in it.
Right.
The printed on text still looks like it's vintage off the rack, essentially.
Yeah.
The one man, we've already discussed that.
Right, we did.
So I think it's plausible. But the guy stabbing at, or not stabbing at Charlie, kind of made me question too. It's like, is he just angry at her? He's not really fighting. He's just trying to murder her, essentially. There's no thought process behind it, which probably lends credence to the whole 10 man on one. I mean, if they all fight like that guy, no wonder they're dead, you know?
Yeah, I suppose so. We don't know. I mean, J.D. Pardo's character, Nate, went and got these guys. They had to have been nearby. We don't know if they're just, the local Barney Fife militia or if they're trained fighters. Clearly, they weren't that skilled, but hopefully that's also not... I can't think of the right word, but hopefully not all the fighting will be that one-dimensional. And it was a great fighting scene, but we agreed there were some issues with it. Now, he also talked about how everyone was pretty and stuff like that, and you're completely right. 15 years with no power, no washing machines, people washing clothes on rocks and stuff like that. Clothing should look a little bit different. No, blow dryers or conditioner for ladies' hairs and stuff like that. But let's be honest, folks. Do we really want a show that shows women with their hair all scraggly and hairy armpits or any of that stuff? Of course we don't. So give them some grace in that area. The Lost got criticized for the same thing. How can those women look that good, after all these years on the island? I don't care. I'm glad they're not depicting them like they would really look after being on an island for that period of time.
Is a very fair point.
I'd say give it some grace. And the guys too. I mean, I'm not just talking about the ladies. I mean, the guys were all, and it's just TV, guys. Everyone's attractive on TV, all that stuff. So that's just the way it is. All right, you want to take the next one there?
All right. Let's see. This one is from Alan. He mentions nobody thought of harnessing the power of electricity. Don't tell me thunderstorms never happened since the blackout. The big question is the whole world blacked out? I won't be surprised if some countries already generated powers and electricity, since our main focal point does not have electricity. They won't know it. I happen to agree with him on a couple of these things.
Okay.
Thunderstorms were really something that kind of bothered me as well.
Okay.
We mentioned that earlier with some of the things that are naturally in the world that are electric. And that's not the only thing that bothered me, as you know, but what happens to those? Do we just have rains? Have weather patterns completely changed?
Right.
We do get the reason that physics has completely gone wacko. So right now I'm going to suspend disbelief and I'm just going to say, no, there's no electricity and magic is holding it. I don't know really what to say is holding it all together. But I do believe that the whole world blacks out. We see that pretty early on. We see the entire United States and North America as well as South America just go dark. So I would say that it probably doesn't end there. As for generating power, that's a question that I would have to agree with as well. I mean, what prevents people from generating it is it leads me to believe that it's something sinister that's killing all of the electrical energy or the magnetic poles or electromagnetism. Everything's just gone. So can you use a potato to make a battery? And if you can't, then how does your body, which uses electricity for its nervous system, function?
Right.
And we want to say, what about just humans? Well, what about electric eels?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of things in this world that run off of electricity that we really don't consider. It's not just a world without iPods and iPads. It's a world without everything physically as we know it.
Right.
If you lose the magnetic poles, does the world stop orbiting? I mean, does everything go out of whack? Do you have, I don't know, all sorts of cosmic collisions? So are we led to believe that this is just on the planet Earth, or is this universal, essentially? So.
Yeah, and I think that's why they've got to, and I think they will. I made the prediction that they'll get to that this season, and it'll be plausible enough we'll be able to go, okay, now I can move on with that, and let's get on with the other things that I'm asking questions about. We'll see. All right, we got this one in from David. He says, just thought of another thing. Human bodies are powered by internal electrical network via neurons. So if batteries can't even work, then why are human internal electrical systems all functioning? Goes right along with what we were just talking about. And, questions that all of us seem to be asking, and hopefully that's what I'm saying. Hopefully we'll get that tackled sooner rather than later, because everyone's asking that question.
And this is why I believe you convinced me with the arguments.
All right, why don't you take the next one there?
All right, this one is from Aaron. He says, I'm watching it over again right now, but I'm irritated by cars and small aircraft not working. It just doesn't make any sense. I need somebody to give me some form of explanation why they would stop working, something, or I'm going to doubt everything on the show. I can almost go for new cars with their computers, but older cars with no computer and small aircraft? When walking through the city of Chicago, there's a working wind-up clock. Why doesn't an older... so why, I guess that would actually read, so why doesn't an older dirt bike work? 1980 and older motocross bikes had no battery. Kick-started, air-fuel spark, no outside input. I get why 15 years later nothing would be working. Gas and batteries gone bad, but he says in the intro that batteries don't work. I can't get past this. Yeah.
Good question.
It's a
Diesel
very good
engine's
question.
another one.
Right.
In fact, Fringe tackled a similar thing to this in season 4. There's an episode called Welcome to Westfield, and nothing seems to be working. They need an old car that doesn't require, doesn't have a computer or anything like that in order to get it to work. And they're thinking like an old diesel engine or a tractor or something like that. And they come up with a diesel engine school bus to transport them that would work despite the electrical interference that's occurring in the area. So it's the same type of questions that they need to, and they'll address it at some point.
I really hope they do. The only thing I can think of why they don't work as well, just kind of answering some of his questions, is I'm not a car guy, but I think spark plugs are some form of electrical spark in order to get the combustion going. So,
yeah, and I don't know anything about diesel engines. I know enough to carry on a conversation with gas engines, but diesels, I don't know. I don't even know if they have spark plugs, and maybe that's why they're not affected. I just don't know. I know I dated a girl one time. Her car was a diesel, one of those Mercedes diesels, like old 70s ones, and it had glow plugs. I don't know what those are. I don't know if they're the equivalent to a spark plug, but it had glow plugs, and they had to heat up before she could crank the engine.
Wow.
But I don't know what that means.
All right. I'm raised in a world with computers, so I don't remember anything about that.
I see. All right, well, that's all the feedback we received for this week. If you want to send in your feedback or theories or comments to the Revolution podcast, you can call us on the Fringe hotline like Chris did, and that's the Golden Spiral Media. You call this for any of our podcasts. That is area code 304-837-2278. You can email us a audio file. That's what Patty did. You can do that over at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. You can also just send us an email like Mike did, and that is also over at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. All right. So the other thing that we do this with our Fringe podcast. We call it Twinge for Fringe, but I don't have any clever name for this. It's just our Rev Twit poll, our Revolution Twit poll. So the hashtag each week is RevTwit, hashtag REVTWIT. So the way this works is on Tuesday, we ask a question via Twitter. We get your responses, and they become our Twitter segment. So let's crank up the music. Let's do that. And unfortunately, that is really short music and not nearly long enough for me to pull out my phone and get the hashtag pulled up here, which I'm doing right now. All right, here we go. So we had some really great responses to the question this week. Now, the question is, what did you like most about the pilot episode? What did you like most about the pilot episode? So here's what we got. From Suprero, since I didn't feel like we got to know the characters much, my favorite thing was probably the epic fights. Like that. Trivial Matter says, it was an introduction and not a lot else. Called pilots for a reason. I give it time to progress before rendering a verdict. Aaron Adowdy says, I like the fact that they skipped most of the apocalyptic stuff and jumped ahead 15 years. We didn't really talk about that part of it. Did you like that, or would you Would you rather him showing it from the point of the impact more?
I have a feeling that that's what the flashbacks are going to be.
That's totally
there
what the
for,
flashbacks
so
are for, yeah.
I have no problem with it right now.
I liked it too. Lemon Eyes says, my favorite part of the Revolution pilot was the introduction of an unexpected mystery in the last scene. Raphael Bragan says, definitely the epic fights. Loved them. Also, the scene in the airplane was awesome with the whiskey. That was pretty awesome. What'd you put in the whiskey? Daymay2466 says, I liked that we now have all sorts of new mysteries to uncover and the fights with the swords while we do it. So that's 3 votes for the fighting scenes so far. Rev Fan Podcast. I'm going to give them a little plug right there. Let's see if I can figure out what their website is. I'm tapping on their name. RevolutionFanPodcast.com. So RevolutionFanPodcast.com if you want to check out another fan podcast on Revolution. They said that it finally aired. It's been so long with the announcement, trailer, sneak preview, and pilot finally on air. That was their favorite part. That's kind of what I mentioned at the beginning. It's been an anticipation, all the work we've put in prior to showtime. Disney One says, really don't care for it at all. It was Terra Nova without the dinosaurs. Emo1281, the quote, I used to work at this place called Google. And they say the cultural references are going to be a fun addition to the show. That'll be fun to see if they do something like that, because we have to put ourselves in these people's shoes. They don't know what a Google is. You know, Charlie was 5 years old when this thing happened. Danny, younger than that. So it'll be fun. It'll be like when I have conversations with you and you have no idea. What was it we had? Oh, you didn't know who Heart was yesterday. We're talking about the band Heart.
Right.
Jeremy has no idea who Heart is.
I still don't know.
It's so sad. One of the greatest female rock band of all time, in my opinion. Jeremy is so young, he doesn't know who they are. So sad. All right. Valerie Bacco says, I truly tried to give it a chance, but the characters must have gone to the Kristen Stewart School of Acting. Ouch.
It's pretty cold.
It's pretty cold. Brewer Fan 71 says, I like that they didn't spend time explaining the blackout. They trust us to stick around and wait for an explanation. Patty TWG says, it showed people making lives for themselves. Aside from the abuses of the militias, it's not all doom and gloom. I like that. Zeppelin Driver says, favorite scene, our heroes sneak up to an airplane at O'Hare. Surprised Frank Lapidus didn't come strolling out. Jimmy Olsen Blues says, I loved some people still have access to electricity and how powerful the general appears. Ted Greaves says, I like the setup of the mysteries. What did Dad download onto the flash drive? What did he know? Etc. Again, flashbacks will tell us. Ducky is Lost says, I like that we're discovering the post-power world with Charlie, and Miles is so cool. They, they crafted him after me, by the way. Well, I invented sword fighting and living in a hotel. All right. Alternate Cat says, Billy Burke. He did an amazing job as our reluctant hero, our Han Solo. Huh?
Very nice.
Very nice. Miles, you can grudgingly save me any day, Kathleen. All right. Browncoat Tom says, the magical USB amulet that lets you boot into DOS. You do know what DOS is, right?
I do know what DOS is.
All right, good.
I had to play video games with it growing up. So
Okay. All right. And then Weezery gave us a two-part answer. Not happy that they changed. Oh, I got to start at the top here, I think. Oh, no. He says, just watched an adaptation of Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. Not happy that they changed Ellie's character to a blonde. So there's some parallels he's drawing there, and I'm assuming Charlie is who he's talking about. And then he says, the stupid question at the end. Did they find it? That was the question on the computer. And he says, would I be typing back to you if they did? So that's good. That's good stuff. So great stuff in our Twitter poll question of the week. Thanks to everybody who sent that in. Again, we'll send that out every Tuesday, and follow us on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. We'll ask a question, respond to the hashtag, and we'll include that. Oh, I do have a couple others here that I put in the show notes. Green Arrow Fangirl says, I've had many favorite shows start with a so-so pilot. Not that this one was bad. The last 5 minutes or so was the best part. And then Bianca Christine says, watching Miles kick butt was awesome. Obviously, there's more to him than we know now. Looking forward to seeing more of him. All right, Jeremy. It's time to start putting a bow tie on this thing and wrapping it up. Why don't you give our contact information?
All right. You can reach us, the Revolution Podcast. We are recorded live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can join our live show by visiting www.goldenspiralmedia.com/live. Submit your theories and feedback to 304-837-2278 or feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. And again, the deadline for submitting this feedback is 6 p.m. Eastern each Tuesday. Contact us again at Twitter at GSM Podcasts or via Facebook at facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia.
You're going to have to loosen up when you're reading, man. You sound like a robot.
Well, maybe I'm going for that sound.
Either that or you sound like you need to be on NPR doing a podcast.
I listened to NPR on the way up here, actually.
Oh, there it is. Now we have the explanation. All right, so one of the things that we do, and sometimes we're more successful at this than others, is we try to come up with some sort of witty sign-off at the end of our podcasts. And for Fringe, I always use the same one. It's Stay Fringe-tastic. I love that one. I'm going to continue to use that one. I'm going to try with the Revolution Podcast to come up with something somewhat witty. I can't promise every time it'll be you'll enjoy it. But anyway, I'm going to try to come up with something new every week. So do you have anything prepared for this?
I'm just going to go as Jeremy, Mr. Robot.
Oh, I like that. Okay. All right. Well, let me set you up a little bit here. I'll say it now. Until next time, I'll do mine, and then you sign off however you...
Oh, okay.
Are you ready for this?
I have no idea. I'm not very witty.
We're going to try it. Here it goes. Guys, really, thanks for joining us for this second episode. It was a ton of fun. Jeremy, you did good.
Uh-huh.
And you'll get better as we go. I teased you about being robotic, and you were. But you'll do better. You did great. The conversation we had was really good.
Good.
So glad I picked you as my co-host. Thanks for joining me. And thanks to all of you for joining us for this second episode of the Revolution Podcast. And until next time, are you ready?
Sure.
Don't forget to squeeze the Charmin.
Domo arigato.
Nice. The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, and for educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. Check out our Revolution blog, live show, and other podcast productions at goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.